Hello, MCU fans. Today is going to be my breakdown and reaction to Loki Season 2, Episode 3, and another fantastic episode. Lots of new mysteries. Didn't shut down many of the existing ones, but that's okay. We got 3 more episodes to go, and I have complete faith that they're gonna wrap this all up and then lead us into the greater multiverse story. So obviously, lots of spoilers for the episode. Make sure you've seen it first, but assuming you have, let's dive right in, see what we can find out. And don't forget, we do have the October contest running all month. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave a comment. To celebrate hitting 10K subscribers, I'm actually having 5 random winners this month that will be announced on a video in early November. And if you win, you can choose between one of the books or steel books above. Best of luck. Okay, so a couple unfinished business items. One is, I've talked a bit about the fact that I think seasons 1 and 2 are basically combined into one big story. And then I found this interview in Deadline where the executive producer, Kevin Wright, really sheds some light on this. One of the questions he was asked is there an arc? Do you guys have like a 5-season plan, a 3-season plan, or do you take it season by season? And Kevin said, we take it season by season. There are certainly things that Tom and I and other casts have talked about where we see this going, and I know there's some excitement for that internally, but just from a storytelling standpoint, I think we always conceived of seasons 1 and 2 as a whole, that these are 2 chapters of the same book, and that the season 2 is finishing that book. There's other stories to be told, and I think they will be new books if that's not too coy. So that's really important. He is stressing Season 1 and Season 2 are 2 chapters of the same book. They go together. And then I think this is important. He's asked, well, are we going to be just as shocked as we were at the end of Season 1? I mean, Season 1 was jaw-dropping. He says, I hope so. But what I will say is it's not a cliffhanger. We want to be able to deliver real fulfillment in what we're doing. But I do think it'll be exciting and unexpected and everything people like about this show. So, yeah, I just think this is really stressing that this is why, in the Disney Plus timeline, they didn't make 2 separate boxes for each season. They really go back to back. Season 2 picks up right after Season 1, and I think Season 2 has to end before the rest of the multiverse saga can happen. So, I understand, though, why people have said, hey, that doesn't make sense, because Kevin Feige himself, a different Kevin, said, he who remains is gone, referring to the end of Season 1, and that allowed a spell to go wrong in Spider-Man No Way Home, which leads to the entire multiverse going quite mad in Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So I'm not saying Kevin Feige was wrong. I'm never going to say that, right? He's Kevin Feige, it's his call. I'm saying I think he was being mischievous. Yes, the end of Loki Season 1 resulted in He Who Remains dying, and yes, ultimately, his death will lead to the greater multiverse saga. But I really think by the fact that we saw Season 1 and 2, picking right up after each other there, and we saw those earlier quotes from the executive producer, I think you watch Season 1 and then Season 2, and then the rest of the multiverse saga. So I don't think Multiverse of Madness has happened yet. Although, I will throw out, this is interesting, right? See that slash across the sky from the movie? It does look kind of similar to some of the slashes we see across the sky here. In fact, you can see over on the right, there's a purple slash that looks really similar. But it's kind of, isn't it weird to think the MCU, 616, or 1999-99, I don't care, but they keep calling it 616, so I'm using that. It's in there. The MCU is in that wavy rope going crazy. So, okay, I guess it's possible. There's a gap between Season 1 and 2, and maybe it doesn't really matter. But my bigger point is this. The loom is still working. The 616 is still isolated from the other timelines that have the Kangs in it. So I don't think at least Quantum Mania, for example, has occurred yet. But we'll see. But I just wanted you to see those quotes from the executive producer that the 2 seasons are 2 chapters of a book and there will be no cliffhanger. We're diving straight into the multiverse saga, and there'll be a new story maybe down the road. All right, so another point. Something I've talked about in a couple of videos is the fact that they've been labeling the branches in a way that certainly implies that even if you go past the red line and you're an official timeline, you're still considered part of 616. Notice in this example, 616.44U. Whatever. Well, I had forgotten this, but if we even go back to Season 1, when they first pruned Loki, in this case, they're getting rid of a Nexus event before it reaches Redline. So notice it's not called a timeline. It's called a timeline segment, meaning we haven't become a full timeline. But notice it's still got the 616 labeling, 616.432. Isn't that wild? And notice the date, December 4th of 1549, because that's when they got him back in the past, when he showed up. But also, even in Season 2, when they went to the Renaissance Fair, this case, April 12th of 1905, once again, timeline segment 616, da-da-da-da-da. Very interesting. And then don't forget, even the whole Earth, the whole sacred timeline is labeled 616. So you basically have the 616 universe, then you have segments, and then you have branches. That's why I'm saying I think this model is what makes sense. It's the best I can come up with, where you have separate universes, each with their own origin point, a big bang and ultimately a big crunch that gave us the different Kangs, even Paint Kang down on the bottom. Give me Paint Kang, right? Each universe can have branching timelines, and ultimately these Kangs found each other, right? And that led to the multiverse war. They exiled the Kang to the Quantum Mania, and ultimately he who remains won the war, quote unquote, by isolating himself from the other Kangs. He isolated himself, created the sacred timeline, and now he's got the red lining where he's saying, we got to prune stuff before it hits that red line. So that's where they've been pruning. However, we have seen, though, the loom has multiple branches. So these are branches that didn't create another Kang. As long as it didn't create another Kang, he didn't care, right? Let it create. We don't care. But now that they quit pruning, of course, we have the mess, right? The loom is overloading. So the blue lines are indicating that they're still inside the loom. It's going nuts right now. But 616, the sacred timeline, is still protected from the multiverse. So that's where I think we're at on this. Please tell me in the comments if you don't agree. Check out my earlier video if you want more on this. I kind of summarized it pretty quickly. But let's dive into the episode now. Okay, so we see Renslayer arriving in 1868. And then ultimately she's going to go to 1893, 25 years later. But this is right after season 1, episode 6 is ending. So again, why these are, chapters of the same book, right? She says, I'm going in search of free will. And then you can see her face there on the left. She's like, this is free will? What is going on? Well, why did I show up here? It's also important to note they're labeling it the sacred timeline, because later, after some of the shenanigans that we're going to get into with Renslayer, she creates a branch. So when Mobius and Loki show up in 1893, they're in the branched timeline. It would have been interesting if they would have actually noted that, if like Mobius had said, oh man, now we're going to a branch. I don't even know if he was paying attention, though. He was just trying to track her down with the Tempad hits. But still, it's very important to note that when she showed up, it was on the sacred timeline, but later created a branch. It's very similar to how we saw in the last episode. They went on the sacred timeline to grab Brad, but Sylvie went to go live on a branch timeline. So I really appreciate they're making it as clear as they can. And I want to stress again, timeline. They're not saying universe, they're saying timeline, because these are all timelines branching off of 616, the sacred timeline, i.e. the 616 universe. Okay, so back to this mission. So Miss Minutes says, the one at the end of time, he told me we need to put this package in that window. It was his plan meant to protect all of time. The plan that he made when he knew the end was near for him. Now that's interesting. You could read that as, oh, he knew he was going to die then? I don't think so. I mean, it could be. Tell me in the comments what you think. But I don't think it's that he knew he was going to die. He knew he could die. He gave Sylvie and Loki the choice. Run the TVA, I'm going to go retire. Or kill me, that's fine, and we'll have chaos and I'll be right back again. Reincarnation, baby, right? So I think this was his plan, that if he were to die, this is how I'm coming back. It's very interesting. But who would have thought it was back in 1868? My goodness, this was unexpected. But yeah, I want to stress, I don't think it's that he knew he was going to die. He just had a contingency plan in place. So it's kind of funny. Renslayer's like, get back. Someone's going to see you. You don't blend in. And talking, of course, to Miss Minutes. So her solution to blend in is to be black and white animation. Not really blending in, but clever. And also, this is going to show up again that she's black and white in the future, which is really kind of cool. So just keep that in mind that she switched to black and white. Even her little shoes changed. Just way cool. So then, back to the mission at hand, Miss Minutes is saying, when he's back where he belongs, you and I will be right by his side. Of course, that's a lie. She has no plans on bringing Renslayer along. But nonetheless, that's what she's telling Renslayer. So Renslayer does what she's asked. You can see her slipping the package through the window there. And it's to a young Victor Timely, who then discovers it, opens it up, and it happens to be a TVA handbook. So this is kind of funny. To me, this is like Back to the Future 2, right? When they gave the sports almanac to Biff. Older Biff gave younger Biff the sports almanac. I mean, you got Endgame, right, where they're just basically making fun of the Back to the Future logic, saying it's all BS. And then now here they are using Back to the Future logic. You got to laugh, right? But keep in mind, in Endgame, they were using the quantum realm. So this type of time travel was impossible. They couldn't do it with the quantum realm. Quantum realm creates branches. You cannot alter your past. But this isn't quantum realm. This is Kang tech. So very interesting. I can't wait until they dive into this a little bit more of why Kang is able to do it. But nonetheless, clearly we're seeing the ability to do time travel that the Hulk never could have even dreamed of. Even Tony Stark couldn't have dreamed of. All right, so this is what I thought was kind of clever. Here we are now back in the future, the present. It's all crazy, right? Anyway, present time in the TVA, and notice the monitor's gone black and white because Miss Minutes went black and white because this is what it looked like last episode. But that shows that even though Miss Minutes is back in the past, and not here with them, she's still controlling the software because she's changed the way it looks. She changed the UI. Wild. She is very powerful, and I think she is going to become a real problem for them before this season ends. All right, so they're still trying to solve the big issue. I mean, OB is saying, good news, we're stable right now, but the branches Doc's pruned are growing back. So the ironic thing is, Doc's committed mass genocide, right? It was terrible, but she also allowed them some spare time, right? So they kind of owe a thanks to Docs, even though what Docs did was horrific. The morality plays in this show are amazing. They really make you think all this through. It's crazy. Anyway, so he's saying, if we can't get back in there and increase the diameter of the loom's intake ring enough to boost the throughput and clear that knot of unrefined time, because remember, it's pulling unrefined time together and weaving it in the loom, multiple timelines, for the sacred timeline 616. Anyway, he's saying we need to scale the loom's capacity to manage all those new branches. But of course, one of the biggest issues is they can't get through the containment doors. Now, Casey suggests, well, what about Miss Minutes? Conceivably, she has administrator access to the entire TVA. So I think this is interesting. Notice they have now got two solutions to opening those containment doors. We learned earlier they need the temporal aura of a He Who Remains variant to open them, or Miss Minutes can open them. So kind of keep that in mind. They've got two possible ways to open them. But I would say this too. I've heard a lot of people theorizing OB is going to turn out to be a villain, which would really make me sad. I don't see why they need to go that direction. I hope they don't. But I do think he's not telling them the whole truth, because isn't it interesting that in the first episode, he closes the containment doors, but now he's going, oh, there's no way to open them. And he's acting like he's surprised, but he helped write this stuff. He helped put it together. Now, granted, Miss Minutes might have put in something he was unaware of, but I do think it's suspicious that OB closes the doors and then now they need a variant to open them again. Maybe OB is part of the plan to bring that variant here and help He Remains, quote unquote, reincarnate. Just throwing that out there. It's also possible, though, that OB had no idea that Miss Minutes threw that issue in, that it would take a variant to open the doors. But just interesting. Maybe there's more going on with OB than we know. All right. So now on the trail of Renslayer, Loki and Mobius head back to where she first went, 1868, because that's where the Tempad got the hit. They're in Chicago, 1868, and then also she jumped to 1893, which is where they're going to go next. I love this line. This is such good writing. So they're saying to themselves, this isn't a pivot point in history. And Loki's asking, are there any major figures that arise from here? And they're standing right outside the window where Victor Timely is. So what's so fascinating about this is, in the sacred timeline, there isn't any major figure that arises, because Victor Timely went on to do whatever he did, being a huckster, I guess, and making a buck here and there, but he certainly didn't create the TVA and the loom and all that stuff. So in the sacred timeline, this is correct. No major figure arises. However, when Renslayer stuck that guide through there, it created a branch timeline, which is what we see here, right? Because now when they go to 1893, it's a branch timeline. So we are no longer on the sacred timeline, no longer on the way time was, quote unquote, supposed to go. We now have a variant of Victor Timely, and he's in this timeline. Okay, so one other interesting thing, though, before we get too deep into what's happening in 1893, notice that Mobius says Edison and H.H. Holmes, as well as hot air balloons. But more importantly, Edison, that's going to come up more why I think he brought up Edison. It's more of an Easter egg. And then H.H. Holmes, which is a different Easter egg. So H.H. Holmes is a serial killer. And in particular, and a real serial killer, not a make-believe one. He killed a lot of people during this World's Fair, by the way, and mostly women. Well, if not only women. Well, guess what they talked about in the second episode of this season? Brad Wolfe, which at least in the comics was a character who was taken over by Zaniac and, you guessed it, killed a bunch of women. I don't know what's going on here, but I mean, is there a connection? Are they just doing this to see if we're paying attention? I mean, that's 2 serial killers that targeted women mentioned in 2 consecutive episodes. Is Jack the Ripper coming in next? I don't know what's going on, but there's something interesting, or it's just a bizarre coincidence. Anyway, H.H. Holmes actually will come up again, though, in a moment. So I want to point out that this is a real fair. It was called actually the World Columbian Fair because it was celebrating the anniversary of Columbus discovering, if we want to call it that, somebody else's land, right? America. But nonetheless, discovering America in Chicago, and it was held in Chicago in 1893. So in fact, there's the Ferris wheel that we're going to see later. So very cool that they took this historical moment, and this is the same time frame when that H.H. Holmes did those murders. In fact, we're going to see that again here because they hear the paperboy shouting out, "Ghost clock continues to haunt the Midway," which that's a big hint that, hey, that's messed up, folks, right? And we're in a branch, so this did not happen in the sacred timeline. So they run over and grab a newspaper. You can see clearly the picture of the ghost clock, missed minutes. But also, notice in the corner, World's Fair Hotel. That was H.H. Holmes' Murder Hotel, which there are series and movies you can watch on, documentaries, I should say, on this that you can watch. He literally had this hotel that had trap doors and fake walls. It would release poison gas in certain rooms. I mean, it sounded like a Saw movie, to be honest. But yeah, he legit killed a ton of people in that during the World's Fair. Craziness. And then also notice down below the thumb there, life insurance. Ouch. It could have been an accident, or it could be they were making a sly little wink and a nod there to the fact that, yeah, if you enter this thing, you probably need life insurance. So, yikes. Little too much H.H. Holmes for me, but nonetheless, it's bringing up a horrific time in our history that really happened. All right. Nonetheless, after all that heavy information, we move on to a lighter time of a snack with Cracker Jacks. Who doesn't love Cracker Jacks, right? Then they head over to see a ton of Easter eggs with these Asgardian statues. I love this. So you got Mobius saying, does it make you homesick or not? But notice we have Thor and Odin and Balder, which we'll get to at least Balder and Odin a little more here. Odin, I like this. In fact, it's funny. Mobius is saying, hey, do you feel like a little left out that you're not up there? But notice that Odin looks just like Anthony Hopkins. I mean, that's funny. That is perfect that they make him look just like him. Then you got Balder. And this is funny because Loki's like, and why did they include Balder? No one's even heard of him. Of course, Mobius is like, oh yeah, Balder the Brave. We know him. Well, they're making fun of the fact that, yes, there is a Balder in the comics, which, barely anybody knew who he was. But more importantly, he was supposedly going to be in each of the first 3 Thor movies and ended up getting cut from the script, never made it in. And then in Multiverse of Madness, not only was he going to be in it, with the Illuminati, it was going to be played by Daniel Craig. So basically, Balder's been cut from 4 different movies. So that's really funny. Of course, no one knows who he is because he's never made it in a movie. But Mobius knows. Then I love Mobius's observation here when he says, sometimes I forget you're one of them. Which, kind of makes the point of it's easy for us to forget that, right? Because Mobius and Loki are just hanging out. They're like buddies on a mission. No, he's literally standing next to an Asgardian god, lower G maybe, but still one of the gods of legend. Pretty cool. Love that. And then I like that Loki gets the last line looking at Thor and says, yeah, Thor's not that tall. Too funny. But also they play the little sad music. I mean, it's just reminding us there's going to be a reunion between these two, and I am so down for it. It's going to be great to see them together again. All right, so then they find their big hint. Mobius notices temporal. Temporal, that's gotta be where Ravonna is. So they head in there to see Victor Timely's astounding temporal marvels. And sure enough, inside there, that's where Ravonna is. And I love that she's telling Miss Minutes to stay in the bag until I tell you otherwise. Those two, as we will see, do not get along and are in quite a bit of a lover's triangle with Victor Timely. So then, we hear, this is it. And Ravonna realizes, okay, the show's about to start. out walks Victor Timely. So basically the post-credit scene we saw from Quantumania finally happening. And he says, time is everything. And then that's Mobius going, is that the loom? Realizing, wait, that looks really familiar. Now, I will say up front, I was kind of thrown off by Jonathan Majors' performance, because I just don't like showmen who draw out their lines really long and wordy. It's like, just get on with it. Keep going, keep going. There's a reason, though, I think he did it, and we'll see that in just a second. So just kind of keep that in mind, that his performance was brilliant on multiple levels. So this is interesting. Once the lights turn on, you can actually hear audible gasps from the audience. And I think it's because we're in 1893. This is not long after the Emancipation Proclamation, when we finally abolished slavery. It's not that many years removed. So we start to see a little bit of the racism that would be there at the time. And I'm proud of Disney for not backing away from that. They're shocked to see a black man up there on stage, with this presentation. And yep, somebody throws out the boy. Ouch. It just kind of hurt to hear that, because it's a reminder of how our history was. We were this way. But anyway, he says, what would you know about the future, boy? And I love this response where he says, more than you might think, right? That long pause where it sounded like he was saying more than you to that dude, which he was, and then might think. So in this case, the showmanship was kind of fun to see him with that pause there. But then he throws down this quote, which is so fascinating, makes you stop and go, wait, which loom is he talking about? Because if we break these words apart, notice he's got in here, it inverts temporal decay, lowering its entropy, gathering it into fine threads, which it weaves into elegant ropes. I mean, if you just read those parts and then you put in timelines, that's the loom in the future. That's so cool. Now, of course, when he's describing it here, it's about electricity and voltage. But he's basically talking about a chaos of particles transformed into order. I love that. Such a clever way of describing exactly what the loom's doing in the future, but how he would have to explain it here in the past. So, and again, it's just another reminder that the sacred timeline is not one timeline, it's multiple timelines woven together like a rope. All right, so then we get the money shot, right? Boom, welcome to the future with the blasts everywhere. That was really cool. And then, Mobius, they give us that reminder in case we're forgetting, his aura, Victor Timely's aura, because they believe that he is a variant of He Who Remains, and we'll get to how on earth that's possible near the end. But nonetheless, for now, they're pretty sure somehow in 1893, a variant of He Who Remains is living, and that will get us access to the loom. Okay, so I'm a little suspicious of the fact they keep bringing it up, because I wonder if we're going to get a surprise next episode where he's not a variant. We'll see. Just hold on to that thought. Anyway, nonetheless, in walks Ravonna, making her move. Mr. Timely, a moment, please. We need to talk about your future. I love that. And here's what I meant about his performance on the stage, because now when he's not performing, when he's just being him, he starts stammering. Sure, some of it's because he's probably attracted to Ravonna, but he stammers multiple times through the rest of the episode. So I think what was happening was he was masking his stammering by being the showman, shouting the lines out in dramatic flair and putting the pauses to catch himself so he didn't stammer. If that's the case, that's a brilliant writing and a brilliant performance by Majors. So cool that he would pull that off so effortlessly. So yeah, it just made me love everything about his performance all the more. So this guy then breaks in and says, hey, I'm thinking along the lines of a partnership, which we're going to see the P word. That didn't work well with Victor Timely. But before we get to that, this dude in the cast is Robber Baron. It's in the middle there, Richard Dixon. Robber Baron. So, why are they calling him Robber Baron? Well, I mentioned earlier there was a little Easter egg with Edison in here, and I think this is more than an Easter egg, it's a burn on Edison, because this guy then says, you give me the patent rights and I'll facilitate production. Well, supposedly, I'm no major historian and I wasn't there to prove it one way or another, but supposedly, Edison did not discover the light bulb. Edison worked at a patent office and would look at all the patents coming through and would either buy out or maybe even steal. I'm not sure how it all worked out. But the bottom line is he didn't invent it. He saw somebody else's patent and he got the rights and then facilitated, if you will, production of the light bulbs. So yeah, this is a sneaky little wink and a nod to Edison isn't quite everything you think he is, which neither is Victor Timely and neither is anybody in this series. So very cool. All right, so Victor Timely, though, heard that word. No, I don't do partners. However, he does have employees because this guy, subordinates, if you will, this guy jumps in. Forgive my bluntness, sir. I must have your temporal loom. Yeah, the womb. The temporal womb. Everybody's got one of those. Temporal loom. Anyway, I must have it. So this guy forces the bidding up until finally we reach $1,000, where Robber Baron's like, that's it, my last offer, everybody back off. So Victor Timely accepts it, right? I believe we have a deal. And Robert Baron chuckles, but no, he's about to find out he got ripped off. But like I said, he's got partners, or not partners, employees, because he goes and gives that guy some of the money and hides it under the hat. So very sneaky. But yeah, I don't view that as a partner, because he basically paid him and said, goodbye. I'm in charge. Your job, they're just paying you to do your job. So Ravonna, though, seeing all this, is like, this is the man who's destined to become he who remains? Like, really? Are you kidding me? And this is an interesting answer. Miss Minute says, with our help, he'll be all he's meant to become. So she doesn't say he who remains. She doesn't say that's who he's going to become. She just says he'll be all he's meant to become. I just think that's interesting because, one theory is this is a closed loop cycle. And this is the origin, if you will, of he who remains. And we're going to end up right back where we were at the start of season 1 when this is all done. That's another possibility. And again, I'll discuss them all in detail at the end, but I'm kind of showing the hints throughout this episode of different ways things could go. But I think this is interesting. Miss Minutes is saying he's going to become something, but I'm not saying for certain it's he who remains. So kind of keep that in mind. All right, so then this dude, this is kind of funny. Hey, clown, you stepped on my foot. Eventually, you have a little confrontation with Loki, knocks off his hat, and Loki says, yeah, okay, goodbye, see ya. And then this is funny. We later see him then sitting in this pig container or behind bars with the pigs. But if you paid real close attention on the way in, so when they were walking in to see Victor Timely, that's where Loki got the idea. He passed by the prize-winning Alpine hogs. That's really funny. So just so many clever things that you sometimes don't notice till a second viewing of the episode, or in my case, where you're going scene by scene meticulously. But yeah, very, very cool. Love that. All right, so then now we're starting to see all the players coming together, right? We got Ravonna, Mobius, Loki, and Victor Timely. And they're saying, hey, we're colleagues. And then Ravonna says, from a long time ago. Now that's interesting, right? Here they are in the past, 1893, and she says, a long time ago. Time is all relative. Time is all relative. All right, so this is interesting because Timely says, I just need the crude technology of this era to catch up with my visionary mind, which shows that sometimes you can be an absolute genius, but if you just don't have the ability to do what it is, can be done, you just don't have the technology. But of course, he only knows what he knows because he got that book. So there's kind of a lot of things going on with that line. So then Robert Baron sees him and catches up with him. And then I think this is kind of a small Easter egg because notice he stands by this pillar, and this pillar is right out front of an Egyptian exhibit, which may be a little wink and a nod to Pharaoh Rama-Tut. Now, I don't think Timely is going to become Rama-Tut. I think they're all different variants. But still, this is just a fun little, don't forget, Rama-Tut has a tie with Kang and He Who Remains and Timely. So just a fun little wink and a nod there. I like this too. The whole Ferris wheel concept. It's a reminder of the circular nature of time. The Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, the circular logic. Very, very cool. Plus, it was a huge set piece, or not set piece, but a huge part of that Chicago Fair. But yeah, so then he traps him in. I love that. Traps him in the Ferris wheel. So he heads up, not before dropping another boy, though. Oh, it just hurt every time he said that. Oh, I just wince. Anyway, so Robert Baron is stuck in the Ferris wheel. Meanwhile, Mobius is contacting the TVA. So weird, right? He's in 1893, and he's calling wherever the TVA is, in the future, outside of time, whatever you believe, right? We don't really know yet. But anyway, he says, we have a He Who Remains variant. So I'm going to stress again, they keep saying this, which makes me wonder, is it not really the case? We'll see. Anyway, and we can use his temporal aura. So yeah, very, very cool for them to be just talking back and forth like that. Okay, so then another player enters the scene. Sylvie uses probably the tempad that she's had. Remember at the end of at the end of episode 2, she has that tempad, and she was able to trace Renslayer herself. So she shows up. Loki tries to stop her. We need him. Without his help, the TVA will be destroyed, which is true. then it's kind of funny. In the middle of all this combat, we get this beautiful view of the outside of the Ferris wheel. And I'm telling you, they really spent their money well on this episode. You just felt so enveloped into this world of the Chicago World's Fair. So cool. So well done. But right outside that, yes, it's beautiful. But inside, no, we got some fights going on. Because Sylvie says stopping that place, the TVA, from being destroyed and fixing it are two very, very different things. And working with one of his variants is not going to get you either. Renslayer set him on a path that he wasn't meant for. So she's taking the position of, this shouldn't have happened. This guy shouldn't have this information. And you're basically feeding him right back to the TVA so he can become, he who remains, or try to take control. I mean, she's got some good points. And now you're waltzing him straight back into the TVA. So yeah, I definitely see where she's going with this. But nonetheless, she's not seen the full picture yet. But I love this. No love lost between Renslayer and Mobius as they're now arguing on which one is the one that she used to track the location, right? Renslayer's saying it's your fault. She tracked you and Loki. And Mobius is going, maybe she tracked you. So there. But most importantly, Mobius is saying, look, the TVA is melting down and he's the key to fixing the loom. So he's trying to convince Renslayer to just calm down, work with me. We need to stick together on this. Well, Sylvie makes her move, blasts both He Who Remains and Loki out of the Ferris wheel, but also Miss Minutes, with the help of Renslayer, makes her move and becomes the terrifying Miss Minutes we saw in the trailers. Really, really scary. Perfect for Halloween, right? Which allows them to escape. And then I thought this was so funny. It's the little things in this series, both seasons, that are so great. So this reminded me of Get Help, because we got Mobius asking Loki to do something, pretty embarrassing, getting on a bicycle built for two. And Loki's like, absolutely not, which of course is what he said about Get Help. And then he did it anyway, because notice in the backdrop, and this is a little later in the show, but I just want you to see this. They're on the bicycle together. So it's just like Get Help, right? He's like, I'm never going to do it. And then there he is. He shows up on the bike. Anyway, we'll get to this scene in a second, though. Let's rewind back a little bit. So remember, Victor Timely escaped with Ravonna and, of course, Miss Minutes, and he's schmoozing her now. The lover's triangle has begun because he's showing her his cool little chair and how you can control the temperature, even keep your drinks cool. And Miss Minutes is like, oh, no, wait, but what about me? What about me? Look at me. I was scary back there. I was awesome. And then, oh, man, he didn't mean to insult, but is this apparition your helper? Oof. To which Miss Minutes is like, no, I'm a fully conscious and sentient artificial intelligent entity, which really is a fascinating way for Disney to go at this point. I mean, we're in the middle of a huge strike by both writers, which has been resolved, and SAG-AFTRA, which hasn't been resolved, the actors, about artificial intelligence. So, no, they didn't know this strike was going to happen when they wrote this, but the fact that they still kept this in and went this direction is epic. It's almost like Disney is admitting, yeah, this stuff is a problem. AI can get out of control. Isn't that interesting? And it's only going to get worse as the episode goes on. But yeah, she's saying, I'm a sentient artificial intelligence entity. Kind of has Ultron vibes, too. A little bit of Ultron here. And then He Who Remains says, well, you are absolutely singular. And she says, why, thank you. You're pretty singular yourself, of course, alluding to the fact that he'll be alone running the TVA in the end. Or at least you will be, she says. So, yeah, pretty funny. And then look at that look on Renslayer's face. Look at that look. They are just competing with each other so much over him, and she's not happy. So then she jumps in with all due respect to Stephen Hawking, a different brief history of time. And she says, a long time ago, which again is hilarious because they're in the past right now, but a version of you created an entity called the Time Variance Authority. But two variants of the same Norse god murdered him. That's pretty funny because two variants didn't. One did, Sylvie. Loki tried to prevent it. But nonetheless, she's basically saying both of them did it, which resulted in the creation of new timelines. I'm going to stress that again. She didn't say new universes, new timelines, because we're talking about this is within the sacred timeline and still protected by the loom. They're not exposed to the rest of the multiverse yet. They're still inside the loom, and it's creating timelines, not universes. And then, which would see the rebirth of countless different versions of you. So if they weren't pruned, again, they would turn into Kangs inside the loom, which would just be horrifying. Not outside the loom, but literally inside the loom. Yikes. All right. So when He Who Remains says, "Oh, good, this is Victor Timely says, this is what I've been waiting for. This is my mission. This is all I'm going to become." She's like, wait, did you hear the murder part? That's why you need me by your side. So it's Ravonna trying to edge her way in, immediately followed by Miss Minutes going, whoa, wait. Even before the TVA or her, you created me. And look at Ravonna's face, just being pushed aside by Miss Minutes. I love this lovers triangle. It was such a clever direction for them to go. And she says, and we work together at the end of time. We look at her little happy eyes like, look at me, look at me. And then, Victor Timely says, and you, Mrs.? And she goes, no, I'm Ms. Ravonna. Notice she gets the side eye from Miss Minutes. So she's distinguishing, I am Ms., not Miss. That's funny. So then, poor Mobius gets reduced to a butler, right? Because He Who Remains says, well, why aren't the two of you in cahoots with him, the other guy that saved him, right? And his butler. And they're like, Loki helped murder your variant. So poor Victor Timely is trying to get all this in his head. I mean, the one guy's trying to save me, but then you said he murdered me? Well, that's because they're lying, of course. But then this is fun little Easter egg. So Robber Baron shows up and he's knocking on the door, and Timely's like, okay, we got to get out of here. And they're like, what, you don't live here? And he's like, no, I don't live here. I do my sales in Chicago, but my lab is in Wisconsin. So what's important about that is, in the comics, the Victor Timely lived in Timely, Wisconsin. So they're kind of doing a little wink and a nod of, okay, yeah, in the comics it was Wisconsin, but we wanted to do Chicago because of the Chicago World's Fair. But yeah, he's got to head back to his lab. So why is he heading back to his lab? He says he's got a very important prototype that he does not want to leave behind. So they could have left right now through a tempad. Ravonna tried to get him to do that, but he's like, no, not yet. I got to go get something first. So after they use this little escape hatch to avoid everybody, which is hilarious, they head off on a boat over to Wisconsin, right? And they go on the SS Heron. That is epic because, of course, Kate Herron directed the first season and did a fantastic job. So very nice way to honor her because she sailed the boat of the first season. She steered it along. All right, so on the boat, this is where, again, Victor Timely mentions that prototype, the whole reason they're going to Wisconsin. He says it's the key to understanding and manipulating time. Very interesting. So he has already figured out how to manipulate time. He can't build the device because he doesn't have, the tools, the technology, but he knows how to do it. Wild. And he says, this is where I keep everything I've ever imagined. And so he's kind of wanting to know, where did he get this thing? And that's when finally it's revealed that Ravonna dropped it off for him. And Ravonna's kind of bragging about it. Oh, but Miss Minutes jumps in and says, oh, you dropped it off to him the same way the postman brings the post. In other words, you're the postman. I'm the one controlling it. So these two fighting each other for his affection is epic. But then, see, he points to, this is my most important discovery I've made yet. And he says, it's a throughput multiplier. It could help you with your loom. Of course, he discovered it for throughput of the energy of electricity, but he's saying maybe this will help you with your loom. Now, this is fascinating because he might have two purposes then. His temporal aura is important to open the containment doors, but he might also know how to fix the loom. But that does raise the question, wasn't OB going to do that? Because OB says, I'm trying to figure out how to retrofit a device to handle all those new branches. So I'm wondering maybe if Victor Timely, and OB are going to kind of get into an argument. I mean, who's the smarter one here? Victor Timely, who read a book written by OB, mind you, but came up with something OB couldn't come up with? So I just think that's interesting. They both have a way, they believe, to fix this. They just can't open those darn containment doors. Anyway, this is a beautiful shot from the other side of the lake or the river. Actually, I'm not real sure. The water. Anyway, you can see the Ferris wheel over there. Just so cool. Again, they spent their money very well on this episode. But yeah, the romance is blooming between these two. He hands her the pretty flower. They touch fingers. But then she says the P word. I have high hopes for this partnership. Nope. As soon as you said that, it's over because as soon as she falls asleep, she's dropped off in a lifeboat into the water and deserted. And Miss Minute says, you heard her, Victor. Partnership. You had to do it. And then she chuckles. Ouch. So now Miss Minutes and Victor head to his lab, which is where he was wanting to go, and he says, "This is the culmination of my life's work." Now remember, he said earlier, it allowed for the manipulation of time. I'm wondering if that's the time chair. It kind of looks like it could become the time chair. So we'll have to see. They don't tell us any more, but that's my early guess, is that that is a version of Kang's time chair. All right, so then, man, things just get really creepy really fast. Because Miss Minutes says, "I thought it'd be smart to lay low for a while." So again, they could have left right now to head back to the TVA, but no, Miss Minutes wants to make a play here. So she turns back to her normal color again and says, "When you first created me, long before the TVA or a multiversal war, I was just a simple AI, just something to play chess with. But you knew I could be more for you, so you gave me autonomy to write my own programming." Again, I love that Disney is going here about AI. I mean, it's very topical to discuss AI in this day and age, but really, they're being slammed for using AI to do this type of stuff. Just wild storyline. But she says, "I alone was by your side. Why didn't you allow me a real body? You kept me as your thing instead of what I could have been. Your girl." Oh, that's so creepy. It's so creepy. But yeah, I mean, Miss Minutes is a mess. I think she's going to be a real problem before this season is done. So then she starts heading for him because he starts to shut her down. "Put that down. Don't do this. We're a team. You need me. I love you." Here's what's interesting, though. She can actually still be shut down. So even as powerful as she is, or seems to be, as a sentient AI, she can still be turned off. So he gets her turned off, only to have a very upset Renslayer show up with, she grabbed and knew what to do with one of his pruning devices, because this would have been his very early attempt at a pruning device. So man, Timely is doing a good job for the technology of the day and creating some of this stuff. But anyway, she says, "I'm the one in charge now." Well, not for long, because then Mobius and Loki show up. So we're getting all the players again on the scene. And Mobius is like, look, we've all lost our way, but someone has to keep track of the big picture here. Just everybody calm down. Well, then shows up Sylvie. Talk about not calming down, right? She blasts everybody across the room, and now she goes to get her revenge. So she's ready to kill him, ready to kill this variant who she feels, if the variant is left to go and finish, his life, that he'll be a threat. And I love this. He says, "You don't know my heart. You don't know the heart I have beating in my chest. You don't know me. I can make my own choices. I'm not the man you think I am." So Sylvia is realizing, oh my gosh, this is me. Victor Timely is me as a little girl, and I have become the TVA who is sitting here saying, "You're a variant, and you're no good, and you need to be destroyed." It's just hitting her of, oh my goodness, I've become the thing that I hated. Such good writing, such a good character arc, and such amazing acting. Oh my goodness, this scene. So she just says, "Get him out of here. Get him out of here." And so sure enough, they open the door, tell him head on through. And she says, "Do not make me regret this." So just incredible. I mean, Sylvie's role has been pretty small so far in this season, but her character arc has been insane. But it doesn't end there, because now that she's got Ravonna at her sword, at the end of a sword, she says, "Oh, I've killed you 1,000 times in my mind." It's crippling, that kind of obsession. And it's true. It's true. You don't destroy the other person. You destroy yourself. And that's what she's realizing. So she says, "Okay, it's power for you. Well, if that's what you want, a seat at the end of time, be careful what you wish for." And she sends her there, just drops her through the door. And we see that time at the end of time has continued on, because He Who Remains' body is basically decomposed. Again, perfect timing for Halloween, because that's like a zombie. I'm waiting for him to get up and come after her. And also the ceiling. The ceiling's just crumbled and fallen to the ground. So what exactly's happened here? I mean, how did something that's at the end of time suddenly experience time? But I wonder if that's the mystery, one of the many mysteries, that they haven't answered yet. It seems when He Who Remains died, whatever was preventing the entropy, remember Victor Timely mentioned entropy with the loom, whatever is preventing the entropy of people's bodies quit working. So everything now is experiencing time. I really hope they explain it, but clearly something about He Who Remains being alive made it so that no one aged. And now they are. Now they're aging. All right, so then she turns on Miss Minutes again, who repeats the last few words she said, love you, and then embarrassingly realizes, oh, okay, I'm talking to Ravonna now. Yikes, oops. So Ravonna, basically chastising Miss Minutes, hey, I had him under control until you sabotaged me, and you made fools of us. Miss Minutes says, well, it was foolish of him to make an enemy of someone who knows all his secrets. I know a really big one about you. I can tell you, but it's going to make you very angry, really angry. So we're left as the episode ends. I love how these episodes are ending. They're doing such a good job with the pacing through these. So what is this mystery? What is this piece of information? Well, my guess is it's going to have something to do with what we heard on the tape in the earlier episode, where He Who Remains said, Ravonna Renslayer, you are quite a marvel. I will be proud to lead with you. You made a difference in this war. Thank you for being on my team. So there may be even more to the mystery Miss Minutes is going to reveal, but even just this, even Ravonna knowing that she should have been ruling with He Who Remains at the end of time, and instead she was reduced to being an employee, basically, a high-ranking one, a judge, but an employee nonetheless. So, and she'll probably learn her mind was wiped, so she didn't even remember this. Going to be very interesting to see how that all goes down. Also interesting to see, how does she end up in the void? Does she walk out of the Citadel? Because this is from the trailers that they've shown us, and it sure looks like she is going to go outside and maybe come face to face with Goliath, because we see the purple coloring. So that's interesting to see where that's going to go. Then I've been mentioning I'm going to bring it up. So here we go. Let's talk about this whole Victor Timely thing. Is he who remains? Is he a variant? Is he something else? Let's look at 3 different scenarios, because I could see 3 very likely possibilities. And I'll discuss which one I think is the most likely. You can tell me what you think, or if you think there's a 4th or 5th or 6th, right? Okay, number 1. This could be truly a closed loop origin for He Who Remains. Meaning, after Victor Timely goes to the future, he'll fix the loom. Maybe there'll be another multiversal war. He'll take over the TBA. And we'll end up right where we were at the beginning of season 1. And you could argue with the Ouroboros, with the, all the closed loop things we've seen, with the time slipping, that's where they're leading, right? I don't know, because while it's true, he did say, reincarnation, baby. He was saying, I'm going to come back. You kill me, I'm coming back. It's true. He did say that. But does that make sense in the context of where the multiverse story is going? That we end up exactly where we started, and this was the origin of He Who Remains? I don't know. Because remember, here's where we're at right now, I think. We have the blue lines, that's the loom, protecting the sacred timeline, which is where He Who Remains was. Of course, he's dead now, but it's the one where everybody's in. And then we have the other Kangs out there. I believe they are already out there and always have been, because the loom, he didn't destroy the other timelines. He isolated himself from them. And when the loom is gone, which I think is going to happen, I think that's the way this is all going to end. The loom is going to be either shut down or explode. That will expose the rest of the multiverse to He Who Remains. To the sacred timeline. So I don't think we're going to get back to He Who Remains being at the end of time running things. Maybe Loki is the one running them. I've heard those theories. That's good. But I just don't think this is a closed loop origin for him. Instead, we're going to see new branches forming that actually intersect with the branches from the other timelines. And that's what's going to make these Kangs aware. When the timelines keep branching and they almost are interweaving with each other in that network, that web that we saw. And I really think Kate Herron told us this. If we look back at an interview she had, I know it says spoilers, but this is from 2021. This is spoilers for Loki season 1, so don't panic. Because I promise, I don't do spoilers in my videos, I promise. Anyway, she said the branches are like bridges to other timelines where the other versions of He Who Remain will be. So look at the way she said that. She didn't say the branches will create new He Who Remains, new Kangs. She says the branches are like bridges to other timelines, presumably existing timelines, where these other versions of He Who Remain will be. So, I don't know. In my opinion, that's what's going to happen. So why am I saying this? Well, to say that the end of these seasons, of this second season, isn't going to be right back where He Who Remains was. It's going to be exposing the sacred timeline to the multiverse. So I don't think that is the scenario. Could be it's a closed loop origin. A second one is, Victor Timely is an ancestor of He Who Remains, who's always been there, that ultimately down the line you will get to He Who Remains in the 31st century, but that this is an early ancestor. And that basically He Who Remains wanted that package to go to him, to give him the knowledge of how to, come back to the TVA and to fix the loom. But in this case, he won't be able to open the containment doors because he's an ancestor. He's not the same variant. So I don't know if they'll go this way because they kept saying so many times, variant, 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 right? They kept calling him a variant. But I could also see him doing that and saying, hey, we fooled you. We kept saying he's a variant, but he isn't. He isn't. We'll see. Here's what's interesting. The only reason I could see this potentially happening is they gave the second way to open the containment doors. They said Miss Minutes could do it. So I could at least see a potential scenario where they bring Victor Timely in and they go, hey, we have our solution. We have our temporal aura. He's going to open those containment doors, and he won't be able to. That's a possibility. I'm just throwing that out. I do think, though, we are going to see him, obviously, in the future, because in the trailers, they've shown us this scene where it looks like he's helping them, figure out how to walk down the platform and fix that loom. So we know the containment doors are going to open. The question is it by his aura or not? Well, if it is by his aura, then we go with the third one. And I do think this is the most likely, is that he is a variant of He Who Remains. But the question is, how on earth did he show up in 1893? Well, I think a possible solution is when He Who Remains created the sacred pipeline, he isolated it, he planted a variant child of himself in the sacred timeline. In fact, probably he was an orphan, and maybe he's adopted, and in fact, his parents maybe have the name Timely, but he didn't originally. Very possible, right? That would be wild if he basically made a sleeper cell in the past. And then that means that Victor Timely, in this case, is a variant, would be able to open the containment doors and has the knowledge to fix the loom, probably along with OB. So I guess I'm leaning towards the third one because I think that would be kind of cool. I just don't think it's going to be a closed loop, and I think the ancestor thing is interesting, but, it doesn't seem as likely. I think he's a variant, and he was planted there by He Who Remains. Pretty wild. Tell me what you think, because this is now, there's so many mysteries, right? They need to unpack, but this is, to me, the biggest one. Like I say, OB is saying the containment doors are locked, and the only person designed to do it is someone with that temporal aura, and I think that will therefore be Victor Timely. So we'll see. We'll see. Okay, there you go. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me your thoughts. And don't forget, be a subscriber, leave a comment. You might be able to win one of these books or one of these steel books, as well as we'd love to have you on Discord. I will leave a pinned comment so you can join our Discord server. And lots of conversations. In this case, this is in the metaphysics, one of the crazier channels, but there's lots of good conversation. We're talking about timelines, branches, dimensions, how they fit into it. So love to have you join us. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-expanding Marvel Cinematic Universe.